20th, 2023. I'd like to take a moment to review our general operating procedures. This meeting is divided into two sessions, public hearing session and deliberation. In the public hearing session, an agenda item is called. The applicant makes their presentation. Commission members ask questions, if any, and members of the public are allowed to make their comments to the commission. Only 4 people may speak for an agenda item and 4 people against. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. After 1 minute remaining, you will have a warning bell or a beep prompting you to summarize your comments. After an opposition speaker, the applicant will have a 2-minute rebuttal. If you do intend to speak, come to the podium at the bottom of the stairs, speak into the microphone, and provide your name and address for the record. Direct all your comments to the commission only and not to the applicant, the staff, or the audience. After hearing all the applications, we will then go into deliberation for each agenda item. Commissioners will discuss each application with input from staff as necessary, but with no input from the audience. The commissioners then vote on each application, and the results of that can be learned from the planning department. If some issues arise during deliberation that were not addressed in the public hearing, we have the discretion to allow additional comments pertaining to those issues to resolve them or call for the application to be held over for discussion at a future meeting. Occasionally, commissioners may recuse themselves from discussing and voting on a given application. This does not mean the member is directly involved with the application or the applicant, but depending on the circumstances, ethical rules require a recusal, even if there is only the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest. If a regular member recuses, a supernumerary will vote in their stead. Planning Commission makes final decision on subdivisions with appeals on these decisions to the Circuit Court. The Planning Commission is strictly a recommending body for rezonings, conditional use permits, and planned developments. City Council makes the final decision on these applications. All appeals of City Council decisions are to the Circuit Court. At this time, please turn all your cell phones to silent or vibrate, and commissioners and staff, please turn on your microphones when speaking. I'll call the roll. Myself, Jay Stubbs, present. Ms. Jennifer Denson, Mr. Kirk Matei.
Here.
Ms. Shirley Sessions.
Here.
Mr. Larry Dorsey.
Here.
Mr. Chad Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Matt Anderson. Mr. Nick Amberger.
Here.
Mr. William Carroll. Mr. Harry Brislin. Mr. Kenny Nichols. We have a quorum, and I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda for July 20.
So moved.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. We will move on to number 1 on the agenda item. It is a holdover of a joint application of subdivision on 2 lots at 1951 Pleasant Avenue. Mr. Kirk Matei is recused. This is the Bolts Lane subdivision, creating 2 legal lots of records from 1 existing legal lot and the waiver of a sidewalk along Rondo Road. Is the applicant present? Oh, there you are. Applicant is present. Do you have any questions for staff, or are you in agreement with, or all good with your application? Applicant is present and in agreement. Is there anyone else here to speak for agenda item number 1 at 1951 Pleasant Avenue? Is there anyone here to speak against this agenda item?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Bert Hoffman. I should point out that there is a sidewalk waiver as part of this application, and there is no real recommendation included in the staff report. So if the applicant would like to discuss whether or not they would support the waiver or would be opposed to a waiver.
Thank you, Bert. With the sidewalk waiver application, could you speak to that on why you're applying for it? And you please come down to the podium.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
while she's coming down, I just note that the engineering comment recommends that the waiver be approved.
Thank you. Engineering has recommended for the waiver of approval. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am. State your name and address for the record.
Carrie Kamanis, 1741 Hunter Avenue, Mobile 36604.
On the waiver.
On the sidewalk waiver, the parcel is located at the end of what was once Rondo Road. It is not necessarily pedestrian friendly. The waiver, the road has a steep decline, and this will be another utility use of the property. It is adjacent to Moz and adjacent to a warehouse owned by Mobile Infirmary. There's no real reason for pedestrian access at this location.
All right. Thank you so much. Any questions from commissioners? All right. Thank you so much. I'll ask again if there's anyone else here to speak against this application. All right. Seeing none, we'll move on. These will be new items for the agenda. Number 2 at 524 and 550 Western Drive, Commercial Park Subdivision, re-subdivision of lots 1 and 2 from from one lot. Is the applicant present? The applicant is present. Are there any questions from commissioners for the applicant? Seeing none, I'll ask if there's anyone else here to speak for this agenda item. Is there anyone here to speak against this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 3 on the agenda. Commissioners, you'll note you have an email at your desk on this application. Subject line is Subdivision 2496. This is at 2451 Staples Road and 4020 Perch Point Drive, the West Yacht Basin subdivision. The subdivision of 2 lots. Is the applicant present? The applicant is present. Commissioners have any questions for this applicant? Seeing none, is there anyone else here to speak for this agenda item? Is there anyone here to speak against this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 4. 3905 Lloyd Station Road, subdivision of 2 lots. Is the applicant present? Applicant is present. Any commissioners have any questions for the applicant on this subdivision? Seeing none, I'll ask if there's anyone here to speak for this agenda item. Is there anyone here to speak against this agenda item? Moving right along, we'll go to number 5 on the agenda. Another subdivision at 4459 Government Boulevard, Lee's subdivision, a re-subdivision of Lot 1. Proposal is a subdivision of 2 lots. Is the applicant present? The applicant is present.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure that it doesn't get lost. Recommended compliance, of course, with engineering, traffic engineering comments and so forth. I just want to highlight the traffic engineering comments are denying access to this service road until it is improved to city standards.
I'll ask if the applicant's aware of that.
Okay.
And you're in agreement. Applicant is aware and in agreement. Is there anyone else here to speak for agenda item number 5, 4459 Government Boulevard? Anyone here to speak against this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 6. We have a sidewalk waiver at 7600 Mitsubishi Lane. Waive construction of sidewalk along Mitsubishi Lane. Is the applicant present? Do you care to comment on the reasoning for the waiver, similar to the previous applicant? Thank you, sir. State your name and address for the record.
Jay Morgan, 2244 Woodley Drive East, Mobile, 36695, representing Chart Incorporated. The site is a industrial site with a active rail spur that is in between the site and the sidewalk location. The only people that would be in using that sidewalk would be employees of CHART, and their safety department feels it creates more of an endangerment to their employees than any public good. There's no amenities in that area, and there's no public access at this time.
Thank you, sir. Any commissioners have questions for the applicant or the applicant representative? Thank you, sir. I'll ask if anyone else is here to speak for this agenda item. Anyone here to speak against it? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 7 on the agenda. This is another sidewalk waiver, construction of sidewalks along South Royal Street and Charleston Street at 50 Charleston Street. Applicant is present. State your name and address for the record.
Patrick Garstecki, 457 St. Michael Street, Coles, Murphy, Glover. Just want to speak a little bit why we believe the sidewalk waiver should be approved. Number one, this is a heavily industrial area. Tractor trailers, trucks will be coming in and out of this facility with containers loaded on them. So number one, safety of pedestrians really is not the best place to be walking in general. Number two is the site directly to the south actually has a sidewalk waiver approval, I think back in 2010. And then Charleston Street to the north is actually a dead-end street that dead ends into the railroad. So, and there's a fence up. I mean, they don't want anybody crossing the tracks. So both sides of this property that would require a sidewalk, we believe, should not be required.
Thank you, Mr. Garstecki. Does any commissioners have any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience to speak for this agenda item. Is there anyone here to speak against this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move on. Agenda item 8. This is a modification at 350, 400, 530, and 660 Dunlap Drive, the Pinto Island Industrial Park subdivision. Austell property. Is the applicant present? The applicant's present. Yes, sir.
Joey Nunley, Austell, 100 Austell Way. Appreciate the commission actually allowing me to speak right quick because I have an additional request. And this seems like to be the sidewalk waiver meeting. But we are asking for that to be added to the agenda as well. This being an industrial park similar to the others, that this is not going to be a safe area for pedestrians to be walking with our modules that we transport up and down the road. So we appreciate the commission taking that into consideration.
Ms. Pappas?
He doesn't need one.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm even better then. Thank you very much.
It's not public right of way.
Okay.
The public right of way ends at Dunlap Drive.
Yes. That
Up at the northern portion. All of the rest of this is private,
Yes.
and you do not need a sidewalk waiver along a private road.
disregard the request. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. On agenda item 8, is there anyone else here to speak for it? Is there anyone here to speak against it? Moving on, we'll move on. For number 8, Mr. Kirk Matei will also be recused on that one as well. Agenda item number 9, rezone at 2258 Airport Boulevard and 267 Seminole Street. Is the applicant present? The applicant is present. Any questions from commissioners on agenda item 9?
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be proper, since the staff reports don't include recommendations, and this is a rezoning, and you got some comments that were sent in by email. I think we should get the applicant to come forward and explain to us what they're doing and why they want a rezoning.
Yeah, I have a question. So it wasn't clear to me. This is a split zoning situation, right?
They are proposing to, they own both pieces of property. And so to develop the property and include the lot to the north that's zoned R1, it has to be rezoned.
So
It's a
they're-
legal lot of record now.
okay, so they're separate lots.
That is correct.
The applicant is present. State your name and address for the records, and we can have some clarity on this rezone.
My name is Paul Stewart, Stewart Surveying, 10930 Dolphin Island Parkway in Theodore.
Mr. Stewart, what are the plans?
The plans are for a strip mall. They want to combine both lots to have parking for a strip mall of approximately 13 to 1,500 square foot spaces, and need that area for parking.
I'll see if any other commissioners have questions or comments for Mr. Stewart.
Looking at the site plan, does that call for parking in the rear, or is that just commercial access for the tenants?
There would be access from Seminole Street into a parking lot. The building would be in the rear primarily, with a buffer behind it, of course, of some sort between them and the residents.
Is there a house on that residential lot
There
right
is-
now?
No, not the empty one, not the, no, sir.
The one that's being rezoned is what I'm asking.
Correct. It's
That was empty?
A question for staff. So is it all one lot right now, or is it two separate lots?
I'm not really sure, to be honest with you.
I mean, on the zoning, it appears it's two lots, but
It appeared to be two different tax parcels, but whether or not they're legal lots, I mean, that area was platted years ago, but I'm not sure, and I don't have my networked laptop at this meeting, so I can't look it up at this point.
they would need to be though. Maybe somebody was going to try to develop something on it and change
Right.
the zoning. It needs to be one lot. of record.
But it's that whole chicken and egg thing. They'd need the zoning to be all one classification before they could combine the lots.
So in a scenario where it was two lots, and zoning got passed, and still would have to come back for a
Yes.
subdivision to combine it.
They would still need a sub to combine it, yes.
We have been for you guys a few weeks back to combine it into one lot, which was approved.
Mr. Stewart, correct, according to the staff report, third paragraph, site history.
Thank you.
I'll note that to the commissioners, you've got 2 sheets of paper referencing this agenda item. Subject line is 2563 for your review. All right. Go ahead.
One final question. There's no structure on the R1 zone lot. Do we know how long, or does anyone have any idea how long that lot's been vacant? Yes, please. 3 to 4 years? Right, no, I mean, the right, no, I was aware of that. I was asking about the R1, the residential lot on Seminole Street.
So it was not vacant, or it has been vacant for some time?
Yeah, Kenny, I used to live a street over from that spot. And that it's been empty forever.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Stewart or the applicant? All right, thank you, Mr. Stewart. I'll ask if there's anyone else here to speak for this agenda item. Is there anyone here to speak against agenda item 9? Yes, sir. I don't think he's able to come down, Mr. Anderson. Please just use your loud voice, please. Mr. Hoffman's going to give you a microphone so you can have that.
Now, can you hear me better?
We heard you. If you want to restate or summarize your comment, yes, sir. Go right ahead one more time, but do state your name and address for the record.
265 Seminole.
Okay.
It's been in my family since 1939. Well, my name is Norbert Niland, N-I-O-L-A-N. I live in Baldwin.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Nyland.
Let me ask you this. This application is to make that commercial, that anything can go in there. My property.
They are asking for the rezone of R1 to go to B2, correct, staff? So it would be anything in the B2 classification.
That's correct. So this is the overall property here that is under consideration. The orange area is already zoned B2. They are proposing that this R1 lot that is currently vacant be rezoned to B2 as well, while the rezoning, if approved, would allow any compliant B2 use to be placed on this overall property. It would have to comply with all of the zoning ordinance requirements, including buffering, which is a minimum of 10 feet. And that consists of setback, no structures or parking would be allowed in the buffer, as well as a minimum 6-foot wooden privacy fence.
So I feel like I'm missing something. So typically, if you see one like this, or in the past, if we saw one like this, it would say it was split zone. But this is, I just looked at it on our map. It's definitely 2 lots.
Currently, but as Mr. Nichols brought out, and it's in the report, this was before the commission a few months back to consolidate these lots into one. A condition, of course, of that approval was that the property had to get rezoned to one classification.
Okay. So we've already said we're going to combine the lots into one.
If
Presuming this happens.
correct.
Okay. That's what I was missing.
And then for clarification for the comment from the audience on the aerial view, Mr. Nyland, can you point out the property that you own but you do not reside in?
All right, 265 Seminole, 2-story house.
Okay. So directly abutting.
Right, it's right next door to the that lot.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, now, one thing about the retaining wall or standing off 10 feet or whatever, if you would come in there and put a tire changing place in there, there's no way you could build a retaining wall that would shut that sound off.
going to devalue my property tremendously. The sound, you can't stop that. I know he's talking about putting a strip mall, but that could change. I do not agree that it should be commercial. With no restrictions.
Well, again, sir, it would have to be compliant within B2 and adhere to the zone ordinances.
So I said you can't build a retaining wall and knock out sound like that. Not when it's only 10 feet away from the property.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone else here to speak against this agenda item? Since we had opposition from the audience, would the applicant like to address that opposition? You'll have a 2-minute time frame. Mr. Stewart.
All right. Our client here assures there will be no tire changing facility there. Their plan is to put a strip mall with at least a 20-foot buffer behind the building with some vegetative growth or sound buffer, beauty, and no tire changing shops of any kind, nothing making noise, just a rental space.
How many units are in?
5 units.
5?
Yeah, 5
Okay.
units.
At square footage per?
1,500 per unit.
All right, so we're talking about 6,500 total square footage, roughly. All right.
Not a tire changing place at all.
Any questions or comments from commissioners to the applicant? All right, thank you, Mr. Stewart.
And I'll just say that tire retreading, tire sales and service, tire manufacturer, none of those are allowed in B2.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
And most automotive uses generally, I think, don't go in B2.
All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 10, 611 Shannon Street. It's a proposal for a conditional use permit to allow a home-based child daycare for children ages 7 to 12 in an R1 single-family residential suburban district.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
this one has to be held over due to improper notification. It will be heard at the Commission's August 17th meeting.
Is the applicant present and aware of that? Okay.
They are aware of it, but they are not present.
Because it's on the agenda, is there anyone else here to speak for this agenda item? Is there anyone here to speak against it? Seeing none, we'll move on. Agenda item number 11, it's a joint application of a subdivision and a modification of a previously approved PUD. This is at 2609 Cameron Street, EBM Midtown. Is the applicant present? Mr.
Jerry
Byrd.
Byrd, Surveying Company, 2609 Halls Mill Road. Subdivision, okay. Clarification on the modified PUD. Number 4. The date, should that be 2002, not 2022? As stated in the staff report. It's
I think under considerations, item number 4, revision of site plan to illustrate compliance with the conditions of approval of rezoning ordinance 64-044 adopted June 18th, 2022. I'll refer to staff.
the last.
So that was a yes? Okay.
All right,
Thank
it should be 2002. So the last statement stating the site must comply with rezoning conditions is referring to the 2002 rezoning. tonight. I mean, we weren't rezoning. That's what bothered me. Okay. That's it. Everything else okay?
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Any further questions or comments from commissioners for the applicant? Does anyone else speak for this agenda item? Anyone here to speak against this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move on. Number 12 on the agenda, another joint application. Please note commissioners, you've got a letter. Subject line of that is 2553 at your seat. This is at 3220 Airport Boulevard, Springdale Mall Subdivision. It's a request to waive the construction of a sidewalk along Airport Boulevard and modification of a previously approved PUD to allow construction of a drive-through coffee shop for mixed-use commercial development in a B3 community business suburban district. Is the applicant present? Yes, sir.
Pete McNeil, Basin Engineering and Surveying, 2811B Toulouse Street.
McNeil, you said?
McNeil.
Okay.
I'm just here for any questions.
Well, following the theme of sidewalk waiver, we'll go into the explanation of that.
Yes, so to start off, there's the two neighboring properties do not have any sidewalks. And then to the west of the property, there is an existing drainage structure. I believe it's a 15-inch reinforced concrete pipe that would impede the sidewalk meeting the road. And then on top of that, there is a fire hydrant in way of that would have to be relocated. And then the grading of the sidewalk, of the sign, the Springdale Mall sign, would affect the ADA compliance of a 2% slope and a 5% cross slope.
Thank you, Mr. McNeil. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Is there anyone here to speak for agenda item 12? Anyone here to speak against it? All right. Thank you, Mr. McNeil. Final agenda item number 13. Joint application at 65 North Mobile Street, UMS Wright. Modification previously approved PUD. Construction of building addition, practice field, 21 space parking lot in an R1 single family residential, and then modification of previously approved approval to allow the construction of the addition, practice field, and parking lot. Is the applicant present? Any questions or comments from commissioners for the applicant? Is there anyone here to speak for this agenda item? Anyone here to speak against this agenda item? All right. That concludes the public hearing session. We'll now move back to agenda item number 1. Reminder that Mr. Kirk Matei is recused. We still have a quorum for this agenda item. It's a holdover at 1951 Pleasant Avenue, Bolts Lane subdivision. Entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the subdivision subject to staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes.
And I would move to approve the sidewalk waiver.
Second.
Sidewalk waiver motion.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Mr. Matei rejoins us. New items. Agenda item number 2. 524 and 550 Western Drive Commercial Park Subdivision, re-subdivision of lots 1 and 2.
Move to approve subject to staff recommendations.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item number 3, reminder to commissioners, you did have a letter here on this application. It's at 2451 Staples Road and 4020 Perch Point Drive, subdivision of 2 lots. The applicant is present.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion among commissioners? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 4, 3905 Lloyd Station Road, Moco Link subdivision. Applicant is present.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendation.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item number 5, 4459 Government Boulevard, Lee's subdivision. The applicant is present. There was some discussion on traffic denying access, and applicant is in agreement.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 6, sidewalk waiver at 7600 Mitsubishi Lane. The applicant is present and gave explanation.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for the sidewalk waiver passes. Agenda item 7, sidewalk waiver at 50 Charleston Street. The applicant is present and gave explanation.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Number 8 on the agenda, modification at 350, 400, 530, and 660 Dunlap Drive. Mr. Kirk Matei is recused. Applicant is present.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Number 9, 2258 Airport Boulevard and 267 Seminole Street. Reminder to commissioners that you do have comments at your seat. We also had comments from the audience. Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion among commissioners? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for the rezone passes. Number 10, it's been recommended for holdover until August 17th. I didn't hear you.
That's because I didn't speak clearly into my microphone. I apologize. There is no action needed
Okay.
because notices went out to hold this over.
We will move on from agenda item 10 to number 11, joint application, subdivision and modification at 2609 Cameron Street, EBM Midtown. The applicant is present, and we have made some adjustments under the consideration section. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve, subject to staff recommendations on the PUD modifying number 4 to 2002.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Number 12, joint application of a sidewalk waiver and modification at 3220 Airport Boulevard in the Springdale Mall subdivision. Remind commissioners that you do have comments at your seat. We have a motion to deny the sidewalk waiver and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. On the modification, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Final agenda item number 13, 65 North Mobile Street, UMS Wright, modification of PUD and a modification of a previously approved planning approval. We'll take them separately. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
So on the first modification, we have a properly moved
And seconded.
and seconded. Thank you. Trying to get my water cap off. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for the modification passes. On the second, which is modification of the previously approved planning approval to allow the construction.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion too passes. This concludes the agenda items for the Planning Commission meeting of July 20. Turn the meeting back over to staff for other business.
We will need to begin with the election of officers. I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that you request nominations for chairman at this point.
This time we'll call for nominations of the chairman position for the remaining of calendar 2023 and partial 2024.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Mr. Jay Stubbs for president.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded for a nomination to retain the chair. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Well, thank you.
My mic was off. So I did say aye. I'm sorry.
We also need to call for nomination of the vice chairman position, and at this time, I will nominate Mr. Kirk Matei for the vice chair position. Been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Congratulations, Mr. Matei. Other business from staff?
You need a secretary.
Second.
We have a properly moved and seconded retention of the secretary chair for Ms. Jennifer Denson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion too passes. So welcome back, Ms. Denson. Thank you. Next items of business.
The last item on the agenda is consideration of the filing deadline meeting date schedule. Those go on fiscal year October 1 to September 30th. If you notice at this point, we're only proposing through the end of this year. Due to the adoption of the UDC, as well as the new subregs, I'm sure most of the commission members have noticed that the agendas aren't quite as full. Today was a full slate, but for instance, the August meeting has one agenda item. So we thought it appropriate to get through a few more meetings, see how those agendas play out before adopting the rest of the schedule for January 1 through September 30th of 2024. I didn't say that.
I'll have comments here in discussion with another commissioner. It makes a lot of sense based on the agenda item volume at the staff level to take this next series of meetings through the end of the calendar year, so the final meeting being December 21, and then have staff make comments towards their volume of applications for first quarter of 2024. The only question that comes up, is there a minimum meeting requirement for the Planning Commission?
There is flexibility in the existing bylaws, which you will be seeing new ones in the coming months that need to be reworked based on the passage of the UDC and the subregs. But that flexibility is in the existing bylaws.
I would propose that we adopt this schedule for the end of the calendar year, and then on the November 16th meeting date in the business section, we establish the meeting dates for the first quarter of 2024. I proposed it as a motion, and if anybody needs to repeat that, that would establish filing deadlines as well as meeting dates for the first quarter, so the months of January, February, and March. Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion among commissioners? All in favor of that meeting schedule and proposition? Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. Perhaps moving forward, we can take it on a quarterly basis, but we'll let staff dictate to us what volume of applications are looking like. Any further business? That concludes